Welcome, everybody, to another Plaid Army stream. It is August 2nd, 2020, and I'm taking a second. I just wanted to make sure that D Live was off. Everybody's showing up. And I got a special guest tonight, but before we bring him in, I was going to show everybody my new digs. My daughter had come over and actually helped me organize a bunch of stuff that I had. So I have to give a shout out to my daughter, Hailstorm. Thanks for helping me out. And without any further ado, I will bring in our guest, Travis. Travis, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, bud. So,
yeah, where do we go from here? We were talking. I always do this. I talk to the guys before we come on the show. Next thing you know, we don't know where to start off.
Yeah. Well, I'll start it off.
Give her.
So, I am the firm believer that the sexual revolution, sexual liberation, has destroyed us culturally, as a society, whatever you want to call it. It has definitely caused a cultural rot, if you will. And I know you had Michael Jones on a while back.
Yeah, it was 2-3 months ago now, I think.
Yeah. And he touches on it like with a Catholic perspective, right? That's fine. But I have more of a biological reasoning for what is going on and why. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it. There was a TED Talk called The Great Porn Experiment. It blew up, right? And it blew
No,
up.
I haven't seen this one, no.
Yeah, it's 8 or 9 years old. And in this video, he talks about how porn has caused young men, like teenage men and younger, 18 and 19, whatever, to have ED, erectile dysfunction, from overuse of porn. And I found that very, very interesting, how a mechanism such as the normal use of procreation has become so perverse over time. And I think pornography, among other things, is the fault, is the reason for it. And basically, when somebody is watching so much porn, right, having multiple tabs open, watching it daily, fapping his gherkin constantly, what ends up happening is that he encounters dopamine resistance. Now, we've heard that before, right? With internet addiction, drug addiction, all these other addictions. But it wasn't until recently did we consider pornography and sex in general to be an addiction that causes the same thing, that manifests in the same way.
Right. I haven't read, again, Michael Jones' book, Libido Dominati, but I've gotten the gist of it and how it changes the neural pathways in one's head. Just the same as, eating McDonald's. It makes you feel good for a second, but it makes you feel worse afterwards. You're changing your biology.
Your brain is plastic, right? It does.
It also, it's hard to say. Like, I haven't been reading the Bible that long, but they already warned against this.
There's a couple occasions in the Bible actually that talk about spilling your seed, right? And there was an immediate punishment for that happening. And it was eye-opening, like as someone that, because when I became actively celibate, I mean, in regards of not being an incel, but someone that chose to be, right? And the reason I did choose that path is because of how I felt doing it. There was a benefit. There's actually a give to it. And that being, I think it's within the first or second week that you have a spike of testosterone. And your androgen receptors, I don't know if you know what this is, but your androgen receptors open up to be able to receive more testosterone, which doesn't happen if you're constantly anesthetized by pornography and fapping it daily, right? If you're releasing yourself daily, you're not giving yourselves the tools and the mechanisms to utilize your testosterone properly.
A lot of people thought it was a myth that fighters would stop having sex a
No,
week before a fight.
Yeah.
No, they all do it.
And it activates your androgen receptors, right? It makes them more responsive to the testosterone in your body. So when people are getting their blood tested in a a medical center or whatever, they'll see the test, they'll see the numbers, and they'll be like, "Well, my testosterone's high, so I'm good." Doesn't matter if your testosterone isn't being used. In fact, I could argue that if your testosterone is just flowing around and they're drawing blood out to find out what your levels are at, and it doesn't determine whether or not your body's using it. And so,
excuse me.
And so knowing that there are androgen receptors in your brain, in your tissues, in your muscle, everywhere. And as a man, we are constantly being told how healthy it is to release ourselves, to relieve ourselves of the sexual burden that is our appetites, right?
Yeah, I heard. How does Owen Benjamin refer to it as? Your sex magic? Yeah, you're literally getting rid of your sex magic. Stop jerking off, and you will start not just reproducing, but producing more in your life in general.
Yeah, didn't Red Hot Chili Peppers say something like that? I can't remember, but
blood sugar, sex magic.
Yes,
that's right. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot. I've been re-listening to a lot of old songs that I guess you could say after discovering the JQ, you start re-listening to them. You're like, oh shit, that's what that means.
Their footprint, their fingerprints are all over everything, right? I mean, when I say that our culture isn't our own, it really fucking isn't our own.
I had a conversation with my daughter about this recently. Like, I used to describe Canadian culture as kind of like, oh, it's a movie culture because, we see a movie and I could repeat it at school or at work and everybody knows that one line that you said and it's like, oh, we all get along. And I even went as far as saying, you bring in people from other countries, they don't understand that culture, right? Because, you're trying to make a joke with a new guy on the job site and he has no idea what the fuck you're talking about. But even still, that's not our culture. No. That's a culture that's been forced on us by people that take advantage of our receptors in our brain and know what feels good and knows what we'll buy. It's been pushed onto society forever. And that makes me wonder if that's what I haven't got that far into the Bible yet. I actually missed Bible study today because I was with my daughter. But yeah, it is what it is, right? I should have brought her with me, but I didn't want to force her to do anything. So,
but you're right though. As a culture, we emulate what we see, right?
Yes.
And I mean, we can criticize our current lifestyle by saying that most of us, as active parents even, aren't really attending to our kids as often as the world is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're letting iPads, and even prior to iPads even being out, or phones, we were letting the TV raise our kids. I was guilty of it. I was busy. It's just easier to hand them an iPad instead of trying to make dinner and doing the same thing. Like, it's just easier to plop them in front of them. They're busy and set for an hour, but what is happening to them in that hour? Most parents don't even bother to watch what their kids are watching anymore.
Yeah, and then once they reach elementary, my son, for example, he's in elementary, and he told me recently that one of his classmates identifies as a boy, who's a girl, right? And I find that weird because at such a young age. And I mean, we hear these stories all the time, but I never had this growing up. You probably never had that growing up. But yeah.
Well, it was like, no, everybody kept it in the closet and they were hiding. There was a reason for that term. And there's a couple of people that came out after school and you're like, that kind of makes sense. That dude was fucked up. Like, and I'm sorry to say it like that, but I'm fucking 40. That's the way it was when I went to school. It's like they weren't normal. That wasn't normal for that to be happening, and they were acting out. They were trying to get attention. They were trying to act flamboyant, and it
Yeah,
just,
yeah. And it was
yeah,
encouraged and nurtured, right? And what's weird is that again, it's not a spite against women, but it's mostly women that encourage it and nurture it. And then the man just goes along to get along, right? Like, oh, I don't want her upset with me. It's whatever. I'll agree with it as long as I can, get with it, right? But
yeah.
and and it's so common. That's so common across the board when it comes to women nurturing it and men just going along with it. And it's disgusting. It really is. I,
There
I
was a video being put out there, a short vine, I guess it was, of guys having these coming out gender parties with their kids, and you see the pain in
yeah,
the father's face when they're trying to smile. It's like, yeah, I support this. In other words, Pop just wants to be fucking left alone, is a garage, not paying attention to any of this, and just pretend everything is fucking normal. That's not normal, dude. The fact that we normalize this is what's paving the way for normalizing pedophilia and adding the P to the pride rainbow, which I did a show on last week. I'm going to redo it and do a polished video instead of the sloppy presentation that I did,
yeah.
but it needs to be said.
Well, this is why I bring up the whole liberation issue. Just give me a second.
Mm. Yeah, it's better than talking about NAMBLA.
But when it comes down to the hormonal exchange and the chemicals going on, again, I reiterate, we live in because I'm gonna be frank. As a kid, as a fucking child, again, I don't know what prompted me to do it. Maybe something happened and I don't remember it. But as a kid, I would, tug my meat at 6 or 7 years old. That's not normal, right?
No, I don't think it is. No, I didn't. I
No.
waited till I was like maybe 11, 12, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, usually it's like 13 or whatever. Like your first experience watching or seeing a Victoria's lingerie magazine or whatever, right? With me, it was super young, and I think back, like if I didn't abuse my body like I did, right? Because right now I've been celibate for 7, 8 years, give or take. Of course, when I was with my fiance, we did the deed, we had some fun, but when we're apart, which we are right now, I am 100% celibate. I don't watch porn. I don't watch anything. I don't fap it. Nothing at all. Here's the thing. I noticed such profound benefits as others do, thousands of others do. Within No Fap and Fapstronauts, you can go on there's forums and
Fabsternauts. That's fucking
Fapstronauts.
fabulous. I haven't heard of that.
Uh, and they term it superpowers. So if you go like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, they're like, oh, I got this fucking mental clarity. I got this strength I never had, this confidence I never had. All these things that you would consider like just default as a man, right? But they never had it. So they call it fucking superpowers.
Wow. That's an interesting theory, to be honest with you. I may have to participate in No Fap November. I don't have the discipline you do. I got to be honest. But I'm not watching porn. I'm at least using the spank bank.
That's good. That's good.
It's a step in the right direction.
But there are other chemical exchanges. And this frames why a lot of marriages and a lot of relationships tend to end within modernity, right? The idea that nothing is meant to last is relative to our recent culture as opposed to what we had for thousands of years. And what I mean is that outside of just the androgen receptors and testosterone increasing, there's also prolactin accumulation. So the more you release, the more prolactin accumulates. And this is commonly called the pulling away hormone. It's what tires you out and wants you or makes you want to go to sleep after you've copulated.
All right,
So,
somebody's actually put it into words.
so the more you have, or the more you copulate, the more you orgasm in general, you're going to cause this prolactin to accumulate in the body, which suppresses oxytocin. So we all know oxytocin to be the bonding hormone, the bonding mechanism, right?
Right?
So as you're in the honeymoon stage with your new girl or with your wife that you just married, and you're copulating left and right, you're totally into her, and then slowly that drifts away. That honeymoon stage just disappears.
Right?
Well, the reality is that it's prolactin accumulation, which is dampening the bonding mechanisms of other hormones, right? Like vasopressin is one of them. Men, especially with men, vasopressin binds with testosterone and binds with their mate stronger than women do with men. Because with women, there was always that risk of losing their man to like war or pestilence, whatever would come their way. Men would have to face it, and they would risk their lives accordingly, right? So women weren't as bound by those mechanisms as men were. Not to say that women aren't bound to us. It's just not as strong. It's not as virulent. But again, with what is it? What's that bonding hormone? Vasopressin, oxytocin. So with prolactin being accumulated, oxytocin is suppressed, and so you're not able to bond or remain bonded with the mate that you're with the person that you married, with the woman that you had a relationship with. And people think, oh, we're just different people now. We're just having a falling out. But the reality is that there's a chemical reaction taking place.
Wow. That's interesting. Do you believe in Karma Sutra and like
Like
is
Careza.
that part of it? Yeah, because this really reminds me of that kid that was fucking Stifler's mom, where he would be there and like he would get an orgasm by being too close to the ficus plant, but he would never jerk off. Do you know what I mean? Like he would just stay away, and they were making fun of it, but it kind of reminds me of that sort of practice, right? Like a meditating, and then once you're actually with a woman and the person you love, it's like a constant orgasm the whole time, as opposed to, just the same way you would just jerk off and blow it out.
Yeah, these are very ancient practices for a reason, right? They've been around a long time. Uh, there's one practice called Careza that I'm very familiar with. Uh, that it does entail intercourse per se. You are having intercourse with your woman. That being said, the aim is not the orgasm, right? The aim is to focus on each other. Their
Maybe
bond.
it's your aim, but that's like kind of been the focus of what I've been doing. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, I mean, and that's the usual, right? And I can't blame you for that. I can't blame anyone.
No, that's it's actually true. I mean, and not to sound fucking hokey or anything like that, but there's a notable difference between when I thought I was fucking or making love. Like when you had a connection with somebody and you had to actually make love, as opposed to taking somebody home after the bar and just fucking them. There was a big difference just with that, and a lot of people can't even understand that sort of truth. So,
But my contention is that we eventually sabotage that connection by
right,
using, because again, we've divorced. And I guess this is where E. Michael Jones gets it right, is that we've divorced procreation from sex. We've sterilized sex simply because of condoms and birth control, which has led the way through sexual liberation and revolution.
yeah. It's kind of how our women were enslaved as well. We're like not only by these little boxes, but I mean, first you started out with giving them the idea that their pictures were better than everybody else's by the number of likes that they would get. And then you put out these apps like Tinder. Yeah, Tinder's part of the process too, where you could just, it's not about who's out there, it's about who else is out there, and you just keep swiping. Right? And
Yeah.
then we've moved on from Instagram to Tinder, then dating apps to OnlyFans. I've seen
And you,
guys absolutely losing their shit over their girls starting an OnlyFans, and the girls would rather do that than have a connection with their guy.
yeah, yeah. And it's again, it's all by design in some way, but it's also a product of this ever evolving, ever changing decay, right? It's just where can we go from here at this point? Like what is next?
One of the comments there in the D Live chat, I see it. It wasn't about women's rights; it was about all sexual degeneracy being legalized.
I mean, if you can make sex the same as any other kind of sex, then every other thing is normal. And what I mean by that is that again, if you divorce procreation from sex, right?
Yeah,
Then what does it become? No different than a gay guy plowing some other dude's ass. It doesn't. There's no difference, right?
I beg to
You,
differ on that one.
well, you know what I'm saying?
I totally got your point, though. Yeah,
Yeah. Because if the aim isn't to have a family, then what are you doing?
yeah. You're becoming a slave to your desires,
Exactly.
and let's face it, we can all become this a slave. That's why they invented the Smurfs. The whole cartoon was showing you how each individual sin can be a slave to or be susceptible of being caught by Gargamel, who you can't even show that guy's picture without it being anti-Semitic.
Is it, I thought we were safe with that one.
What, the Smurfs?
Mm-mm. Gargamel. I thought we could
Oh,
vote without it being anything.
I
Is
don't
it?
know. I think it was pulled off the air because they considered it so anti-Semitic with the hidden messages with it. I was gonna do another video on that,
Did
but it's
he grab
just
a lot? Did he fucking do that?
that's his thing.
That's
You know
just,
what
okay.
we should pull it up actually is when how Smurfette was made. It's unbelievable.
Jesus.
Gargamel made her like he did the other Smurfs, but
Right.
and sent her out. And it's funny how it's described. It's described as like a cohesive boys' club that it was like a meritocracy where everybody worked off their own merit. They were happily painting and doing their own thing. And then Gargamel made a woman to send in chaos, dismay, disorder, and make them break their sins. So she shows up with looking like the rest of them with a normal dress, flat shoes, and whatever else. And Papa Smurf is like, "Oh, hang on, I'm going to take you with me." Like the old guy takes her aside, brings him into his place first. She gets slutted up with a spell. With now she has blonde hair, heels, and in a different dress. She comes out, and all the boys go crazy over her, right? And they're all, oh, it's just so funny. There's so much hitting meeting in the Smurfs that we should honestly just dedicate one guy in the Plaid Army just to watch the entire old series about what it was. Not just the old series, read the books because the stories of Gargamel was actually done by a 14th century Renaissance author, and Gargamel was based off a true guy who would go around door to door knocking, I guess, during the Crusades to say, "Hey, what's your religious background? What are your intentions? Whatever else." And he had Azrael, the angel of death, his cat, that followed with him.
Which was one of the fallen angels, by the way.
Yeah,
Enoch. Yeah.
yeah. So there's so much meaning in the older text, and actually Gargamel. There was a second guy with Gargamel as well, and that's why there's so much hitting meaning in the Smurfs, but it's also been subverted in the same sense because in the newer Smurfs he was meant to look like a grabbler, but in the older one, in the Renaissance, he was actually with the Catholic Church, or I don't know if it was considered the Catholic Church back then, but
Well, yeah, because he's wearing a cloak, right? He's wearing like a monk type
yeah.
garment. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you remember the place he lived in, that was the old clock tower in the old church of the town he lived in. And yeah, there's so much hidden meaning in it that
Well, a lot of old literature, fables, right? Like I think I posted pictures of this a while back, and it's like what Hansel and Gretel, right? Hansel and Gretel going to the witch's house. The imagery of that. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I
I think you know what I'm
remember.
talking about. Like there's a Star of David's everywhere, and the witch, of course, has a bigger nose. Uh,
Seems to be the staple of when you're dealing with a grappler, I guess. Like that was Gargamel's deal too. It was like this giant schnoz that's indescribable. It's funny too. Even Brainiac, one of the Smurfs, I don't know if he was supposed to represent Lenin or Stalin, or sorry, Lenin back then, or Trotsky. Trotsky, I think it was, because he kept getting kicked out of each country. And every time he would stand there and go, "Oh well, you know what we should do," they'd kick him all the way out of the Smurfville. If you remember, Brainiac would always be kicked out, and he would land on his face, and his glasses would come off, and all this shit. There's so much symbolism. I guess you could also take things into your own consideration sometimes and like read into them too
is that
far.
when the
But
media wasn't subverted? Is that? I mean, we don't have to go that far back, but just far enough, right?
well, yeah, it wasn't subverted quite yet, and it also was being produced by Americans, right? In a meritocracy, the best survived, and then once you get the infiltration, what do you do?
Well, once you get endless finances, once you control the banks, the government,
You
every
can make it out of thin air
finance,
and fund whoever
yeah,
you want.
which
Like,
is what they do, right?
I was talking to David Icke, and he dances around it a little bit, but he's like, there's people that get unlimited funding to support whatever it is that they're doing, just to be that spokesperson, like Bill Gates. Here you go, Bill. Here's a shit ton of money. Do whatever you want, but you have to promote so much of this if you want this rich and power. Like,
Yeah.
do you really think one guy made all this money off computers? Like, now he's controlled for sure. Why the fuck is the computer guy trying to sell us virus protection after he's been selling us virus protection for fucking 40 years? For our computers, like, your computer's got a virus. Oh, we can sell you the antivirus stuff.
We had legit doctors come out. I mean, regardless of what you think about their politics or what they believe in outside of their profession, we had actual doctors come out and say that hydrochloroquine or whatever it's called,
Hydroxychloroquine.
hydroxychloroquine, yeah. So it treats COVID-19 and effectively cures it in a vaccine sort of way, right? Once you got the antibodies, you can't get affected again. At least that's in theory, right?
Yeah.
So these doctors come out saying this, and it's wiped off the map. It's just taken off the internet, at least for the most part. People can still find it here and there, but it was actively targeted, right? Bill Gates, who again has nothing to do with the medical field. He's not a medical professional, and
And this guy's able to push his vaccine. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
Bill Gates is not only they say he's the third biggest supporter of third biggest donator to the World Health Organization.
yeah,
United States was number one, Gavi was number two. Bill Gates owns Gavi. Like, he funds Gavi. So technically, if
yeah,
you add Bill Gates's donation and Gavi's donations together, they equal more than the United States.
yeah.
They just split them up. It's like,
It's laundering, but in a nice way.
we're just going to promote this guy's, and the World Health Organization has come out numerous times saying how, going back and forth with their own opinion. You got YouTube saying they're going to censor anybody that has a different opinion than the World Health Organization, and yet the World Health Organization can just flip on a dime. Like, if you can't see that everything's being controlled at this point, like, why can't a group of doctors disagree with this group of doctors? What if it was from a different country? And then I would like to see that. I would like to see who has better results. But
Fauci went back and forth at least 3 or 4 times on the mask
yeah,
mandate.
yeah,
We
Fauci.
don't need it. It's a security blanket. It's fine. You don't need it. Oh, you do need it. It works, but it doesn't work. Like, what the fuck? What are we doing? And why are we letting Fauci, who's been consistently wrong,
Yeah.
right? Why are we letting him dictate anything at this point?
And it's
Anything?
funny on both sides. They're trying to argue their own point in the sense that you have the left people, the Biden people, the people that just completely believe the media, going for Bill Gates, the vaccine, wear your mask. Then you have the Trump people. Even I'm watching Trump's moves, the Q people, the MAGA people, that just doesn't matter what he does.
Yeah.
Like they won't even analyze it, and they'll make it an excuse because of these Q conspiracies. Now, how fucking deep they'll go. They'll say, "Oh, yeah, he's doing that. He knows about Fauci. He's gonna hang him out to dry. He has to bring them out in front of everybody to be able to expose them." It's
So
like
don't get me
you're
wrong.
gonna go ahead.
Some of the Q people, like very, very minor amount of Q people, are good at what they do.
I gotta say, Amazing Polly is good at what she does. She does her own research. Even if she is inspired by Q, she goes out and finds a bunch of shit on her own. So Q
And
has helped
credit-
out with a few things.
Credit where credit is due, right?
Yeah.
It's excellent that some people are doing it, but majority of Q people, a majority of them, are lazy as fuck, right? They're just waiting for things to happen, and it will happen. Not what they think it's going to happen, but shit's going to happen. It's just not like, again, they're targeting these small fish, right? Like these celebrity pedophiles and all that shit. It doesn't matter, right? I think you mentioned this before, maybe on your last podcast actually, or last stream, where they're not really focusing on the big fish. They're not focusing on who's pulling the strings, who's pulling on the levers, and who's moving the pieces around. They don't care about that. They're thinking about celebrities and fucking Ellen DeGenerate, right? Who gives a fuck about her?
Yeah.
Like her coworkers already fucking hate her. Nobody cares.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier about how Oprah subverted an entire generation of stay-at-home moms. The boomers that were all making good money, having a single income household, and they left their women home there to be indoctrinated. Every one of those women's got a vote. This was a long game played out very well. One that uses people that have nothing to do with their faith and their ideology as frontmen. And this narrative has been constructed so well that even if you are part of the Great Awakening, because I still think that is happening, there's a lot of people realizing what's going on.
Yeah.
And some people went for the Q conspiracy, but what that taught them how to listen for and find things out for themselves, and it wasn't just Q anymore. Now it's JQ. And like, you can't just leave Q by itself. There's a J with that Q.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? The whole premise is to name them. Like, again, the small fish about celebrities and stuff. Okay, well, who fucking controls the celebrities? Who made them a celebrity? Who gave them that power? Who gave them that platform?
Right. And unfortunately, that's what you have to be talking about. You can't be talking about the big. I mean, it's the essence of fishing, isn't it? You have a nice shiny lure, so the nice fish come up and fucking bite on it. As soon as you do, you got a hook and you're gone to the one holding the rod that you didn't see on the outside the pond.
My buddy, I have this friend of mine. He actually brought that up, the lure, the fishing lure, imagery, if you will.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense. He brings it up a lot, by the way. Like, every time we have a conversation, he has to remind me about the fishing lure. But yeah, I think JQ is like the last stop when it comes to conspiracy. And I don't like the idea of theory. There's no theory behind it. It's
no,
factual.
There's not.
There's no argument that can be had. We know the Kalergi plan is not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's real. It's demonstratable. It's observable. Fuck, it's repeatable on multiple ends. we see it for what it is.
It sucks when you do too. Like people like Adam Green, Ryan Dawson, the Red Ice that are not afraid to call it out. Look what has happened to them too. They've had all their financial avenues taken away. They've been censored off
Yeah.
the major platforms. Why would that happen? Is it just because one group is super sensitive, or do you think they might be the final stop? There's no going anywhere after this. Like,
Yeah, and that's true. And here's the thing: for years during 9/11, after 9/11, we had open range on criticism of Muslims. Like you could just say whatever you wanted to, and nobody would bat an eye. I mean, they might not like your politics, but nobody would give a shit.
no.
Same with Christians. I mean, for decades, Christians have been on the chopping block, right?
Well,
It's
they've been the focal point
yeah,
of the subversion, right? Like I had no exposure to religion other than going to a friend's house and realizing that their parents were religious or something like that. I'm like, who the fuck is God? What are you talking about? I don't know. Like, I really didn't know. And then I went to school and I started to learn from school because they had the Lord's Prayer in school. I think my parents took me to Sunday school prior to that, maybe two, three times, but they didn't want to take us back. We embarrassed them by playing catch with the baby Jesus. So it just wasn't a thing in my family, right? Like going to these, and then you grow up and you'd ask genuine questions to your friends, and they'd just say, "Oh," I'm like, "What's confirmation?" Ah, that's when you get confirmed. Like that doesn't fucking help me. I don't like they don't even know themselves. They were just brought up in it. And
yeah,
now it wasn't until I've gone so far with my research through bullshit with politics and subversion of words and everything else that I had to come back, actually get myself a Bible to understand what the fuck the world is based off of. Otherwise, we've been taken so far away from this, and it's been a constant. It's under the name of good intentions. It's under the name of freedom and inclusion and diversity. We'll take the
yeah,
Lord's Prayer out of school. We'll stop. We'll allow gay marriages. We'll allow abortion. We'll allow all these different things, and you just think it's liberation, just like the sexual liberation. It was the gay movement was a big part of the sexual liberation movement as well.
yeah,
It
yeah.
it's funny. It's not until you decide to dissent from the position that you feel comfortable in and take a relook at everything under a new glance, and it's amazing. It really
Well,
is that.
it's funny. The Bible actually says, in order to come to God, you need to come to Him as a child. What does that mean? Well, it means to. I mean, metaphor-wise, would be to empty that cup of knowledge that you have, right? Completely empty it out. Take out whatever you think or believe of the world and get rid of it.
That's part of the subversion that they use, is to say why can't you come out as an adult, because an adult asks questions and it's too awkward and it's not worth your time. It's like, why do they want a fresh mind? And people use the phrase, bring us your meek minded. It's like, well, I'm strong minded, I don't need that. We've been subverted so hard, and the constant barrage of people that hate that book um are going to continually beat on it. And that's honestly why it made me interested in it.
Yeah.
I've always been interested in what is in the rebellion stage, and that's the Overton window for me. And how the fuck did that book end up in my view?
Oh,
Like,
you know what? Same way it's come to my possession. And again, it harkens back to like when I decided to become rather celibate. When I decided, I want to get rid of this pornography. I want to better my life. I didn't even know the long term outcomes of it. I didn't know the positive ramifications of it. I just wanted to get rid of all these so-called burdens that the Bible talks about and benefit myself. I was kind of selfish in that way, but in a way it benefits other people outside of me. Um, so I did that. I got rid of pornography. I stopped drinking. I stopped doing all these things that I felt were restraints that felt like they had control over me as opposed to me having control over them. And as a result, I've been able to see the world through a different lens. If it wasn't for the things that I've done, I wouldn't have came to the JQ.
Right.
In fact, the Bible right now, the Bible as it stands right now, is now is being called an anti-Semitic book.
Hate speech, even.
Yeah, the New Testament.
I think the Canadian Army is actually put out in an official statement that Christianity can be considered a far right ideology.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and you know what? That's part of the reason I wanted to get an old dictionary as well, because the more I learn about politics, the more I learn how it's bullshit. And even the words that we're using right now, I was speaking to you earlier about the teacher and their description of what left and right is. And the left is, loving and caring, and they're more nurturing and stuff like that. And right leaning is more tight with money. And it's just, oh my goodness, that you're a teacher. That's where we've been going with this. And now, I mean, the interpretation I was getting was small government and big government, right? That was for the past, I don't know how long. And now, relearning words and stuff like that, libido dominati, conservative Christian values. It's like, it's not left and right government. There shouldn't be any government. There should be answer to one person, God. And I'm not saying I'm following along with this yet, but this is the way our society was intended and supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Is you answer to God under the laws of the Lord, and you move forward from there. So conservative Christian values, and then somebody else comes in and says, no, we don't have to do it this way. We can liberate. You don't have to be so uptight with these things. Just loosen up. We can go with our own, you can have sex with men. You can kill your babies. You can enjoy alcohol in excess. You can go out and pay for women. You can masturbate. You can, whatever feels good, you can do it. Just pay me money. Yep. It's amazing to think that's, and sorry to finish the thought, was just to people that say, oh, I'm atheist, or, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual and whatever else. It's like, you don't even realize where your culture came from in the first place and what your practices were supposed to be before we got subverted into what you think is a new belief. And I keep doing a train like this because that's pretty much where you end up in your neural pathways in your brain, and you have to descent back all the way back to like a 4-year-old, like you're saying, or you can say the beginning of your mammalian brain, to relearn stuff and make new pathways as you learn, new neural connections. And you can do it a lot easier if you're not masturbating.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to come back around. But the deferring of long-term consequence or even benefit has completely been wiped away from our lexicon, right? Like, we no longer talk about waiting out things or seeing how they unfold, right? We just, like, liberation and rebellion and all that stuff. We saw the instant gratification, and we scooped it up right away. Yeah. We saw the enticement, and we delved right in. We didn't care.
And a big part of that is also the feminist movement, not just giving women their own voice. Sure, some women, how do you describe that properly? You could say it with Adam and Eve, giving Eve the choice to choose have her own choice will get you banned from your own land forever. So it's kind of like the women, the right to vote as well.
Yeah. What did Adam do? He went along to get along.
Right? We're kind of at that age now in our society where, there should be why don't we have a female leader of the army? Just because we've never tried it before. We should do this, right, guys? No, you shouldn't.
I mean,
this is a bad idea.
Every observable evidence of a female leader taking reign has ended disastrously. Not to say that a male leader doesn't have that aptitude to be the worst fucking leader ever, right?
Of course.
But when it comes to the numbers game, or when it comes to suffering, or just ineptitude entirely, women lead the pack when it comes to leadership. And we've all of us have worked, right? We've all been in positions underneath someone, and every time we've had a a female uh, uh, manager or whatever, we notice the difference.
Sure.
We feel like it. I mean, and everybody does. Women do, men do. We all notice the difference, and it's not a positive one.
No, I can agree with that. I think most people can. It's not. We've even had names for it, bossy bitch or a Karen, or there's
Right.
always that. And it's not to say all women. To be honest with you, some women are made for certain jobs.
Some
You know,
women
like,
are some women are alpha females, right?
yep,
They're determined, they're strong-willed, they're ambitious. Good on them, right?
yeah,
But that's not your average. And not only that, but if you grab a alpha male, right? Someone that is just as, if not more, determined, he's going to outperform the alpha female. So even the alpha female is going to be registering at a lower grade than the alpha male.
yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
the bell curve, the IQ, the strength, the ability. It's just, I mean,
But
across,
now that you've gone through the feminist, which wasn't a sexual liberation, it was a liberation of rights. You know, I want to be able to do everything a man can do, but you know, I don't
yeah,
want to pick up garbage every Thursday. I want to have a corner office in the fucking zoo that you built after all the animals that you've caught. I want to take a corner office in your fucking what you've built. But it goes even further back with the not just the right to vote. Um, it's a soft subversion of one's true society or culture or background history. Once the I was trying to describe this to the teacher as well. It's like, okay, when you want to tax somebody, what's a good reason to tax somebody? You want everybody to have free health care. It's a noble cause. You should do that. Uh, you should tax people for the sewers and whatever else, you know, your public services, all that stuff. Well, of course, everybody's got to do that. Police force, ambulance. Well, shouldn't every kid be able to eat too? Yeah, absolutely. So we should pay for fucking food for everybody, right? Yes. And everybody should have toothpaste. Let's tax people a little
yeah,
bit more so everybody can have toothpaste. Of course, that's a great idea. And you know, it's always done under a noble cause, and it's you know, think yes, everybody should have that. You're heartless. You're on the right, and you're just too tight with money. It's the perfect fucking argument to get into full communism.
it's basically a filament of platitudes. It's what can we give them now that will help us garner the vote, right? Like what kind of gifts can we give them now that we haven't already given them that will give us the vote? And
Yeah.
it comes back to the BLM thing because at some point they ran out of fucking shit they can give them, right? So at some point they had to create a boogeyman, which was I don't know white supremacy or something. I
White
don't even,
privilege.
yeah, white privilege. Or, I don't even know what were they writing about? The guy that died, like that again. That happens all the time, but they
Yeah.
singled out one death, right?
I honestly think the toilet paper thing was a test run to see if they can make people riot, if they can make them wear masks, if they can make them stay at home.
Yeah, how many people are following the media? I mean, how many people are loyalists to the public?
Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah,
Like, is it time to sell everybody a vaccine? Like, it's gotten insane.
if you convince people to wear masks and not only that, but self-police themselves,
Yeah.
right? Like making sure that everybody turns into a fucking Karen by proxy, then yeah, then they can sell you the fucking vaccine because they will they will have all types of Karens coming after you.
I'm
And,
watching grown women yelling at children about not wearing a mask, telling them, "I hope your kids die."
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what is going on here? What happened? And the video I just did recently, I did it to Guns N' Roses "Civil War." I don't know if you've ever listened to the lyrics of that song or re-listened to them
no, I don't
because
think so.
it's great song. Like Guns N' Roses was a big part of my youth. Never listened to the lyrics the way I do now. "Civil War" is a fantastic fucking song.
Well, it's like Soundgarden, blow up the inside, or let's blow up the inside or outworld or something like that. But the lyrics behind it are very relevant to today, right? the idea that he just has like this in the music video, he has a screen strapped to his face, right? He's being indoctrinated and all this shit. And I'm like, that's people nowadays. They got their cell phones, their tablets, their television, every form of media instantly. And
Well, of course, this exact process has been tested out with people before. I mean, the giant screen on everybody's wall was done in '84 when everybody had a giant tube television and the technology wasn't even there to know what a TV on the wall should and would look like.
yeah,
You know, and they have this stuff and they roll it out. The idea of a screen being strapped to somebody's head, how do they even have a screen that small or know of that? Like, it's all been rolling out in a systematic way. Like, the stuff is all ready to control you before it even comes out. The experiments that they got to be doing on people, that's MK Ultra.
I think, and it's funny you say that. I think because I had a revelation a few days ago, and I believe everybody has been MK'd. I think
Yes.
to a degree, we are all traumatized in one way or another because of the media. We're seeing images that no normal person would ever see.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing things that in a lifetime our ancestors, at least majority of them, didn't get to see. Like it's not like everybody was in perpetual war, you know what I mean? A lot of people lived their whole entire lives, just hunting off the land, feeding their family, providing, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I
here we
did
are
that.
seeing,
It's funny that we mentioned this and the superpowers that you get from not jerking off, you could say. But I spent a week in the bush, 9 days, and not jerking off once. I'm in a fucking tiny trailer with another dude for my entire week. I'm not. It's just you forget about it, right? By
yeah,
the time I was done that week, I was calling old girls that I used to date or I wanted to date and stuff like that. It's like, hey, we need to get together and do something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But also living off the land, so to speak. I mean, minor groceries. We're getting all our meat from what we hunt and fished.
Mm.
Fucking what a great life. That was part of the same video I was putting together with Civil War. It seemed relevant together for some reason.
And that would be our default if it were. I mean, every fond memory that I've had, in fact, not only that, every dream that I've ever had was either outdoors or with family, friends. I've never fucking once dreamt, and probably the same with you. I've never dreamt about being on the computer or looking down on my phone.
No, I can't say that happens. Usually when I dream, if I'm in somebody's house, I know it's their house, but it looks totally different. It has all these extra rooms in it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
You know
like
what I mean? Like it's a giant maze, but you know whose house that is.
yeah, it's
It's a
an
very
amalgamation
weird
of
experience.
something else. Yeah,
That's something I think that's been taken away from us too, like DMT and the experience to be able to dream. DMT is in everything natural around us, and when our food is so processed and whatever else, you don't get those entanglement dreams that you're supposed to have by eating crap food. When I was in jail, I guess the food was more natural. They gave us a good diet. I dreamt every single night. I don't know if that was because my body was captive and my mind wanted to go free, or is because I was eating 3 square meals a day and had a set
I I
schedule.
can I can tell you what that is, and it's definitely the set schedule. What time would they put you to bed, or what time would you have to go to bed?
Lights out was at 8 or 9, I think. I forget
Yeah,
now.
that's
I
that's
was I was
exactly
only there for 2 months, so and that was ten
yeah,
years ago.
but that's exactly why, because you're going to bed at a respectable time, and what that means is that your REM sleep, like your circadian rhythm, right, where your cortisol is high in the morning and it dips around mid afternoon, and then you go to sleep, right? Well, that aligns with your REM sleep as well. So if you're sleeping at 8, 9 p.m., respectively, you're able to hit uh, that rapid eye movement, that burst of hallucinogenic from your pineal gland, right? You're able to get that. Whereas if you're going to bed late at night, 1 a.m., 12 a.m., you're not giving yourself a proper time slot to get that hallucinogen or that what I like to call the defragment of the brain. Because
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
yeah, that's what I believe dreams are. Because like when you have all these images and amalgamations of things that make no fucking sense, right? But at the same time, you understand it. Like it's a story or it's a memory or it's many things that have come together.
It's funny. I've had thousands of dreams over my life, but the ones that I had when I was in jail, I remember them. Still remember them.
Yeah.
And that fuck, I guess those are visions in a way. Like you remember the Indians, I still call them Indians. That's how I was raised and brought up in school. That's what you called them, was Indians. The native people of this land are First Nations. First Nations. You know what? That's a really shitty name for somebody that never built a nation and didn't have a name for its people. Fuck. They had names for their tribes, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a nation per
No,
se.
it wasn't. It wasn't.
But
It was no. They were nomads. They were
yeah,
nomads, and whenever they came across another tribe, they either murdered them or I don't know, destroyed them in other means. But I mean, they were not friendly to each other. It it wasn't the case. And
a lot of scalping, a lot of beating, and a few. You get such a mixed history depending on which one you actually read. Like you say, oh, they were a peaceful society. They played lacrosse and lived in long houses, and they had fences, and they were a community, and all such and such. But then, like you hear about the war, some people give it like, oh, when they went to war, people didn't really get hurt. They went with clubs and fists and whatever else. I'm like, they had fucking arrows and tomahawks. Don't tell me they weren't trying to fucking kill each other when they went. Like it was a fucking high school skirmish and the
really,
smoking pick in '98. Like,
when we came over, right? And I say we as someone's ancestors, probably not my own, but when Europeans came over, they made the Indians, or I guess native population,
right.
or
First Nations.
yeah, first.
You should be fuck First Nations. We should be calling them like the No Nations, not a nations or something. I don't know. No, I'm just being a dick.
Well, we'll think of something more constructive. But yeah, we made them more deadlier. We gave them horses and fucking and weapons, right? It's like, hey, you might like your arrows, but we gave you guns.
That's so true, eh? Most people look at it like, oh yeah, the natives had horses when we got here. Like people, as far as a lot of their history goes, you're just looking at westerns, and it was like they had a horse, they had a horse, and a lot of people thought that they learned from the natives about horses. No, they got that from us or from the Spaniards. Sorry,
Yeah.
more or less. Like the horses were not native to over here. We have swamp donkeys, elk, and fucking deer.
We actually gave them their first means of transportation.
Domesticated transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm not even sure. Did they do the canoe on their own?
no,
I'm starting to wonder now.
probably not. Probably. You know what? I'll give that to them if they did. But I have a suspicion, a high suspicion rate in regards to the Aboriginal that maybe they didn't. They had opportunities to create things less uh, less complicated, like the wheel, right? They could have went that route. It's an easy mechanism.
Fair.
Uh, Instead of a device that floated and stayed afloat and was shaped properly to do so. Again, there's certain inventions that occur before you reach the boat. Is what I'm saying.
They like if we gave them horses, did we design loincloths as well? And I say we, I just mean the people that they consider colonialists that didn't come here. All white people are invaders on this land.
Yeah, like they just walked around nude, like the Mayans, pretty much. Like, was that the game?
I suppose so. I guess they could have been sacrificed. Their civilization were fine. Were they though? If you're, sacrificing people to a sun god, um, that's kind of weird. And maybe that wasn't North American Indians and Eskimos. Sorry for the crude language. That could have just been the Mexicans, which is kind of racist on its own to think that the Mexicans were doing things fucked up more than the
I
other
gotta say
Inuit.
something. I gotta say something. I have this theory, right? Now, again, this isn't to put myself on a high horse or you or anyone, but if a culture has progressed to a certain point, I mean, technology wise, evolution in regards of their ability to hunt, their machinery, everything that they've produced, right? Why is it that those cultures aren't seen as the ancient cultures, whereas the ones that are still thousands of years behind are seen as the ancient ones?
I'm not sure. I see. I'm looking at the D Live chat there, and they said they were introduced to alcohol, which destroyed them.
Oh, that's true.
Um,
That's true.
I mean, it wasn't fucking good for their benefit. Their livers weren't accustomed to the same sort of.
Not only that, but their biology in general, like
Yeah, it wasn't well for them. It didn't go good for them. That's for sure.
I mean,
But I mean, it was a fair exchange between syphilis and smallpox.
yeah, which
It was actually it's quite a miraculous thing that part of the human race got separated because they obviously came. They look like Mongolians, and it's more prevalent when you start looking at the Inuit and whatnot, and that land bridge they used to go across from northern Russia to Alaska.
yeah,
That's obviously how they came there. And the land has shifted, so we lost contact with it. These people went their own way. These people went their own way, and then they reconnected again and started producing new people. Like I'm not sure that's ever happened in human history before.
no, not organically, anyways, right? I mean, to that extent, but
Fair. Otherwise, I don't know what organically would be. Right? We don't know how small the tribes were once people got here, how people got here. The definitive answer. Uh, as I read the Bible more, it's like I'm not necessarily sure, and I don't know. Like everybody else takes it as the gospel. It seems like a very well laid out way to live. I don't know if it's the word of God. It's just one of those like, hey, here's some stories that you should be able to find relevant. That could have been the same idea with the pyramids put with hieroglyphics and stuff. If you do this, you'll end up a slave.
yeah,
You
I
do this, you'll be a slave to your desires, you know?
I had a talk with a Muslim friend of mine, um, and we were discussing theology, not in a debate sense, but talking about how it is that our ancient texts came about, and in theory, it could have been just a bunch of men that, through thousands of years of experience, trial and error, that they found out what works and what doesn't, and then they laid it out in multiple books, called it the Bible or the Quran, right?
Yeah, sure.
And they've discovered what works, at least for them, right? Within their culture. And whether or not you want to believe it's divine word of God or if it's just the wisdom of man, I mean, I'd argue that it's a divinity, it's a divine word because even the Bible says not to go along with the world, right? And not to go along with the wisdom of man. So
Well, right. It's I don't know if there's problems with the translation or not, if that's what we're missing out on, because it creeps me out the way they talk about it in the Bible, like our Lord and Savior and the whole miraculous birth, miraculous conception. Like, there's a lot of stories that don't make sense. But you got to remember, I was raised as an atheist, right? I'm giving the Bible an honest chance, and I do see meaning in it. Like, I am seeing how these stories tell you if you go this way, this is what happens, like Sodom and Gomorrah. Um, that's where I feel like we are right now. So if there was any lesson to be learned in the story of that, it's like God doesn't have to send a fucking flood to kill these people. The flood could be interpreted as
they'll curse themselves.
it could be a flood of zombies wearing masks. in a
Well,
sense.
I look at the action of sin or the behavior of sin actually curses us long term. And the greatest achievement for these subverters, these people that have taken over our culture and others, uh, the greatest achievement is the efforts in which they've lowered our ability to think critically and lowered our IQ. And
Yeah.
that goes back to pornography because I can correlate. I mean, it's a stretch, mind you, but I could correlate the decline of testosterone in men over decades with that of the IQ dropping.
Both attributes that make a man what he is, IQ and testosterone.
And again, if your androgen receptors are less dense and taking in less testosterone, your body's going to downregulate accordingly.
Right.
Because it's not going to have a bunch of testosterone floating around, uh, creating a toxic environment in which, because again, too much of anything just in your body is actually bad, right? That's why there's aromatase, which converts testosterone into estrogen and estradiol and DHT and all that stuff. Your body automatically does that, right? Because if there's too much testosterone and the androgen receptors aren't taking it up, then it needs to convert it. It needs to change it. So again, there's a feedback loop going on, is what I'm getting at here. If your testosterone's high, right after the second week or third week of being abstinent, that reopens androgen receptors that were made dormant from bodily abuse via masturbation or habitual sex.
So, it is a good point. I mean, you can destroy somebody by giving them too many resources too, and I understand that to an extent with the manipulation of money and how much money a society would have, and trying to regulate what something is worth. The free market is best, no government, no regulation. But I mean, if somebody starts making too much money for a product that's not technically theirs, like a pimp, let's say, he's selling pussy. He's selling pussy under the guise of protection to them, and the entire ruse of the whole thing. I mean, if a woman wants to sell herself, you can't stop her from doing it. I mean, you can try and read her the Bible or preach to her or whatever, but you can't stop her from doing it. Brings us back to the most primordial state, doesn't it? I mean, they did an experiment with monkeys. They tried to introduce the idea of cash into their society, and the first thing they did is they wanted to pay the women for sex. Until money is made, the fiat system is made apparent to people, it's not manipulated in that way. The only thing stopping them from using that is their own moral code. The only thing stopping the chimp from fucking the other chimp is a moral code that they have an agreement between each other. Instead of, as soon as you introduce money or power into the situation, yeah.
I want to expand upon that. You know about the bonobos, right?
I don't know the word, no.
They're a part of the chimp family. They diverged a little bit. They're not much different physically,
okay,
mobility-wise. But the bonobos are especially different from the chimp in regards to their behavior. And the reason for it is because where they live, there are no natural predators. So what they can do, much like a chimpanzee in captivity, is copulate day and night. They can do whatever they want, and there will be no recourse from it.
Okay.
What's the downfall of it? Well, the same degenerate behavior we have here. Homosexuality, right? Perverse acts. Like they behave the same as those that are given every ability.
They behave like old stage Romans.
Well, yeah, if they're given the allowance to do it, they're no different from our modern society that has given the same allowance to do what they do.
That's funny. These chimps are in the age of decadence.
Yeah. I mean, and again,
That's
what's funny is that I often bring it up. It's like when I see like a tranny or somebody complaining about obligatory rights and all this bullshit, I often think to myself, we desperately need some strife. We need some struggle because
seriously.
without,
You know what we're like? We're like fucking pandas. The
yeah,
stupid pandas won't even fucking copulate. They've got everything so good, like all
yeah,
the free bamboo. They got fucking whatever they want. They're just, you know what? Let them die off. Pandas are useless. I know they're a national treasure over there in the east. Let them go. They're not doing it.
and bonobos are the same way. They don't, they're
Fuck
not,
the bonobos. Well, let's start a
no,
campaign. Like, get rid of this weak species.
they're not copulating for the sake of the species. They're fucking the same sex. They're fucking the same, like they're having orgies.
So, bonobos is like a racist term for white people now, if you think about it. Because that's what's happening to our society. We're a bunch of bonobos sitting around fucking the
Yeah,
same sex. And like
no
our
problem,
children are worried about what gender they are. No struggles, no nothing.
no
We
adverse.
need to. Maybe the best thing we've ever had is having the introduction to Islam to our culture. We need some strife. We need something to set up some borders and say, no, no, we need to live this way,
Yeah,
which is really the essence behind Wexit, I would suppose. Not everybody's doing it under this
I,
same
I,
intentions, but we see how it's going.
I had a theory. Our society is going to go one of two ways. So either women, which they won't, either women give up their rights, right, and including
Good luck with
yeah, I
today's
know, right?
woman.
I know it's not going to happen. Either they do that, right, or a patriarchal society uh, replaces the old, and it won't be us. I mean, God, hoping it would be, but no, it'll be another culture that comes in and becomes patriarchal and rules over women, and and that will, and that was like the theory for a while in regards of how we're going to stop the economic collapse. Is that well, we have to get rid of women's rights because they keep on voting in more and more government. They keep on voting in more taxes. They keep on voting in like all these measurements that cost more funding. Which again, white men are the only ones that pay into the tax bracket more than they take out.
That's a hard
So
sell, and it's not going to come unless it's under strife. That's for sure. You have to be able to put people into a situation where they
yeah,
feel the need to give up their own rights, and it has been done subversely through our government, where they feel the need to give up their own rights at this point. But that's kind of getting off topic. Actually, what I was going to do here, I was going to play a song for everybody. We'll take a 5 minute break. I got to use the bathroom myself, so if you need to grab a drink or whatever else, we'll do that. I'll just put in another 50 lemons into the D Live chat, just so I can hear somebody screaming in the background. That sounds really healthy. The laughter of children. Is that what I hear?
it's outside. Yeah,
Oh, is it outside? Fuck. That's something that brings anybody with a heart joy. The
isn't
laughter
it?
of
It's
children.
real life, and it's in the moment too. They just
It is. It's so natural. It's so genuine that it should bring a smile to your face. It's like somebody with an infectious laugh. You know that they find the joy in that, so it brings joy to you as well.
yeah. Or you see a person smiling at their phone, right? And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I wonder,
It's like
I wonder,
they're genuinely smiling. You can tell the difference between a forced one and
yeah. I was thinking about
but
like, oh, that guy's probably looking at a pretty funny anti-Semitic meme. Good for him.
fair enough. All right, guys, I'm gonna play a little Civil War, the song I was talking about before, and then we'll be back in a minute.
What we've got here is